It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I am glad to be here. I apologize that I was out last week. For those of you that were sending me messages and missives, I'm grateful and I appreciate very much your continued support and your well wishes. Those of you who put forth prayers, I'm thankful and grateful to you. I want to thank our friends over at Big Country 99, too, for trying to help out there while I was out sick. And so for those of you that are new to the show or new to the program this morning, sorry, I just got back from a week away. I got a relapse of the flu, and as a result, decided to take the week off and try to give myself a break. I have not had a break or a week off, or any time off, in fact, other than an isolated day or two, in the last 2.5 years. And so, well, it was pretty necessary. And that's that. So thanks to our friends over at Patriot FB. That's Patriot Facebook. You can get over there and join with other like-minded individuals and patriots by going to patriotfb.com. And make sure that you join and sign up there, where you can post your thoughts, meet other like-minded individuals, and not worry about censorship and the like. It's a great website. There are some outstanding and excellent radio programs that are also played there, in addition to America's Voice Now, which you can catch streaming there live every day. But in addition to that, you have Conservative Junction Radio with J.J. McCartney, which is a great program. You have also the Midnight Patriot with Jeff. Now, there's a brand new program also with Tom Lakarova, and that I'm not sure what time that's coming on. I believe it comes on at 11 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Central. So it's on right after me. And I would encourage you to just click the streaming link for Patriot Radio, and you can hear program after program after program after program after program. The idea, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are changing the face of talk radio. We are the alternative media who are changing what the dialogue is in reference to what our nation is dealing with on a day in and day out basis. And we want to make sure that you're a participant in that. So please feel free to join us by going to Patriot FB. If you're a listener with us on our Big Country 99, broadcasting out of South Central Missouri, you're welcome to listen to us there, of course, from midnight to 2. But you can also catch us on our listen line at 415-325-0725. That listen line is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can simply catch the program live while it's on, or simply join afterwards and dial in at any time, and you get your own personal broadcast of America's Voice Now. Again, that phone number is area code 415-325-0725. If you'd like to call the show while we're in session live, you're certainly welcome to do that. Our phone number is 417-204-5141. That's 417-204-5141. And you're always welcome to call the program as long as we're not interviewing someone. And log on with us and share your ideas or your thoughts and what's happening with you. We're always interested in knowing what's going on and what your thoughts are about different topics that we talk about and discuss. So I also want to quickly thank a brand new sponsor of America's Voice, and that is the Express 1 and Express 2 mini marts based in West Plains. Make sure that you have an opportunity and a chance to see those guys. They are a discount tobacco, beer, and liquor outlet, and they have 2 different locations. And so make sure that you patronize them. We'll be talking a little bit more about them shortly. There is one that is on the corner of Route 14 and Route 63 in what used to be Old Granny's Cafe. They do have a drive-through, so if you're interested in zipping through there, they carry beer and liquor and things like that, and they have a Monster Ice Cold beer cave. They carry vapory cigarettes and stuff like that as well. Snacks, chips, hot food, lottery tickets, the whole 9 yards. They have the cheapest soft drinks in town, by the way, at 39 cents and up. Their other location is directly across the street from the city pool at the People's Park in West Plains. No liquor or alcohol at that particular facility. They do offer guaranteed lowest prices and, again, the best cigarette prices in town. So if you're a smoker, that's where you go. Okay, let's talk about our 4 topics for this morning. Our first and foremost is the Farm Bill and the massive amount of pork that is tied to it. Our second topic is going to be the Federal Reserve's balance of $4 trillion. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bernanke has left the building, and unfortunately he's left a significant amount of debt with the Federal Reserve. $4 trillion is the new balance. And remember something. We are responsible for that entire $4 trillion, and the Federal Reserve bought it with money they created from nothing, and we're paying interest on it. So we're actually paying it twice, plus interest. It is an actual criminal charade, what goes on with the Federal Reserve. And if you are not aware of what a cabal, or actually what the definition of a cabal is, then you need to look at the Federal Reserve. Our third topic, the DNC. That's the Democratic National Convention, or the Democratic Party. Donna Brazile, who is one of their sycophants, has come out and actually spilled the truth. She has come out yesterday and said she wants to reform immigration so that illegals can vote. Well, finally, we actually have some truth. Some truth from, now, and don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. I don't believe that their intent was to actually tell the truth. I believe that she made the mistake of letting the truth slip in a Freudian manner. The Democrats wanted to shore up their numbers to make them unbeatable at the polls. The Republicans want immigration because they've been paid in full by their corporate masters, and now they have to make good on their wholesale sellout of the American people. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no greater level of evidence than what the Democrats and the Republicans are doing to the United States of America and to our nation than what you're seeing here with the Immigration Act. That and the Farm Bill and the pork look, no one should be in doubt anymore as to the betrayal that we are dealing with at the hands of these criminals who call themselves, frankly, our representatives. Our fourth topic is going to be Eric Holder, my dear, dear friend Eric. Eric, who is the highest law enforcement officer in the nation, and yet came out in an investigation where he was being questioned by Congress. And the guy actually has the unmitigated gall to say, I didn't know anything about the fact that the investigator chosen to look into the charges of the IRS being used as a weapon of mass destruction against conservative political groups was an Obama contributor and therefore completely incapable of being objective. Wow. So, let's understand this. Either way you look at Mr. Holder's statement, his position is completely untenable. Either he is a liar, which is unbecoming of the chief law enforcement officer in the nation, or he is malfeasant in his duty to administer justice in an unbiased and objective manner. And he must eliminate any possible conflict of interest or even the hint that that conflict of interest might exist or be present. And frankly, because of the sensitive nature of this particular investigation, no one should doubt that he had every intention of appointing an individual who would be sympathetic, shall we say, to their side. So, what it really comes down to is either he's malfeasant or he's a liar. Frankly, I believe he's both. He should be removed from office. He should be charged criminally with high crime against the nation of the United States of America, to which he has sworn an oath. He should also be charged as an accessory to murder resulting from the Fast and Furious investigations. And then he should either be imprisoned for life or terminated at the jury's determination. Ladies and gentlemen, those words may sound harsh, and you can bet your bottom dollar, because I've used them before, that they ensure that I am on the main core database list. But the truth of the matter is, my life is already forfeit, for I am a dead man walking, as are you. The only difference between us may be that you haven't fully acknowledged it yet. In fact, we all are. I'll explain that further as we get into that topic or that segment this morning. First things first, let's take a look at the pork that's in the $1 trillion farm bill. Now, with all due respect, there aren't enough farms in the United States left to spend $1 trillion on. In fact, with $1 trillion, you could pretty much buy all the farms that are left in the nation. The president's State of the Union, in which he came out and made some frank and blatant threats against the United States of America, against our rule of law, against our Constitution, against the principles and the policies and the ideas and the concepts and the tenets that this nation was built upon, was kind of an overshadowing, and it hid the truth of the Farm Bill, which honestly was passed wholesale by these people over in the House. They couldn't wait to betray us. Now, it's been sent down to the Senate. It actually reduces 1%. There is actually one or two other reductions in there, but basically what they're alluding to is the fact that they're reducing food stamps by 1%. But ladies and gentlemen, it's a $1 trillion bill. And all it does is give these traitors in Congress an enormous amount of volume and money by which they can pay off their cronies, pay back their corporate sponsors, and make good on their promises. The promises that they made when they accepted money from corporate entities to stick you with a bill, betray your interests, betray your trust, betray their sworn oath to protect and defend this nation from all threats, both foreign and domestic. Now, that threat and the threats that come from the domestic aspect belong not only to the federal government and its state-sponsored terrorism against the United States of America and the citizens therein, but also the mercenary activities of Congress itself. When I say mercenary, I mean they have been paid to wage war against the people of the United States by their corporate masters. It's that simple. They have been paid. And instead of using uniforms and weaponry, and instead of using tanks, and instead of using knives and guns to subjugate a foreign nation, they're subjugating their own nation with rules and regulations which amount to nothing more than treason. They no longer adhere or ally themselves with the Constitution. We don't operate under a Constitution. In fact, we operate now under a corporate law that is not even closely related to the Constitution. What we have at this point is, excuse me, I'm still struggling a little bit with the flu, but what we have at this point is a shadow government that operates almost exclusively in the United States in complete violation and betrayal of the original Constitution that you and I believe we operate under. How can I say that? Well, let me put it to you this way. We're so far beyond the boundaries of what our constitutional authorizations are for that one must look at the reality of how we arrived here. And the way that we arrived here is not by failing to hold Congress accountable. The way we got here is because Congress is not interested in following a Constitution that, quite frankly, is not in play anymore. What do I mean by that? Well, if you take a look at the way in which we are operating right now, we are not operating in a constitutional format because we are operating as a corporation, not as a government. And the difference there is significant. When I say that, and I'm going to talk more about this over the course of this week, because I think it's important that we finally acknowledge the real reason, the real motivation, the real problem that we have. It's not that we have a constitution that they're not monitoring or adhering to. It is that they are adhering to a constitution which is bounded by corporate law and not common law. We gave up our Constitution, unwittingly, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But we were misled, and for all intents and purposes, we no longer have a constitutional function that operates within the rule of law. Now what we've descended to is essentially a corporatocracy where the rules are made. That's why we have administrative agencies that operate without constitutional authorization. And they change the law, not by passing laws as required by the Constitution, but by rules and regulations and the implementation of rules and regulations which parade about as law. Now, they can't call them law. And the reason they can't call them law is because, one, Congress doesn't pass them, and two, Congress can't pass them and keep them constitutional. That's the proof, ladies and gentlemen, that the Constitution, for all intents and purposes, was eviscerated and eliminated back in the 13th and 14th Amendments. So what you have to realize is that when we are dangling on the precipice of financial dissolution, when we are dangling on the precipice of tyrannical despotism and totalitarianism. We have a Congress which has, for all intents and purposes, thrown a new $950 billion bill at us, a $1 trillion bill. And amazingly enough, because the way that the program works gives money to farmers to do things that are outside of treaties that we've already signed, not only do we pay them these subsidies, but because we're violating treaties that we've created and agreed to, we actually have to pay a penalty on top of that to the other nations, which we have betrayed for all intents and purposes in our treaty. So it's really not $950 billion, folks. The truth is it is closer to $1 trillion because they don't incorporate the fines and the penalties into that total bill. Look, we're talking about an amount of money here which most people can't even begin to fathom. And when we look at the amount of fraud and the amount of waste that is associated with this, and the fact that we are, for all intents and purposes, bankrupt, to take on a $1 trillion bill, irrespective of how long it's supposed to be broken up as a part or over a period of time, is not malfeasant, it's criminal. This isn't about doing what's right by American farms and farmers. This is all about doing what's right by the people who have paid Congress to get these bills passed. It's fleecing not only the taxpayer, but the consumer as well. There are insurance subsidies, $144 million for cotton growers to buy insurance. If you're a cotton grower and you want to buy insurance, go right ahead and do that. But you cannot justify taxpayers paying for that bill. What it comes down to, ladies and gentlemen, and by the way, we're going to have to borrow the $1 trillion. What it comes down to is a nation operating outside the boundaries of law, where we have a Congress which has long, long ago sold us down the road. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to cover our second topic, which is the Federal Reserve balance of $4 trillion and how that spells trouble when you combine that with a new $1 trillion we just took on in debt. You're listening to America's Voice Now. You can find us on the web by going to americasvoicenow.org, facebook.com/America's Voice Now, youtube.com/America's Voice Now, and patriotfb.com. We'll be back in just a moment. Stick with us. All right. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host this morning. I am back from a 1-week break, which I called a vacation, but, well, it really wasn't. The sick leave, I think, is probably a more appropriate term for it. We're going to talk about the Fed, the Federal Reserve, a private cabal of bankers who create and produce and manufacture money for the purposes of buying debt from the federal government, and they make it and produce it from nothing. In other words, they don't actually have this $4 trillion. They've just added zeros to an electronic account to declare that they actually do have it, and then utilizing that new fake balance sheet, they are buying the federal debt of the United States of America, and then they actually, in a final betrayal, charge us interest on the debt which they bought with money they produced from nothing. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, a more illogical principle could not be, even by the most imaginative fiction writer, a more illogical concept could not be produced. Here we have a group of bankers that are owned privately by, or an organization that is owned privately by banks. Their membership and their membership roster is secret. The actions that they take on behalf of the nation are secret and are not subject to oversight by Congress, with the argument that they can't act impartially if Congress is overseeing what they're doing and questioning them about their activity. Their goal is supposed to keep a unified and stable monetary system and money supply, to eliminate the wild swings of a free capitalist marketplace, which obviously in and of itself raises questions about free enterprise, because how can you have free enterprise if you have an organization that is attempting to control it? You can't have control and freedom in the same, or use them in the same sentence. The two concepts are antithetical to each other. Furthermore, they actually produce money from nothing by which to buy our debt, which other countries won't buy because, quite frankly, they're scared of a country that now owes $18 trillion and only has $16 trillion in gross domestic product. And they're afraid that this president knows more than he's willing to let on, i.e., an example, that he's really blowing up the debt, knowing full well that not only is there no way that we'll ever pay it off, but furthermore, that the real motivation behind this is to blow up the debt so that they can pull the rug out at the last minute. And by pulling that rug out, they will accomplish a number of things. One, they will have foreign nations who we owe all of this money to kind of held hostage. Secondarily, it will cause a global financial collapse from which the phoenix of tyranny can rise from the ashes of freedom and liberty. And if you believe that that's too fantastical for you to understand or to put credence or credibility to, then I ask you to give me an alternative explanation. I ask you to provide for me some methodology that explains and actually appropriately recognizes what other purpose this could all be based upon. In other words, if my theory of the MO, the modus operandi, is wrong, then I challenge you to give me a better explanation. I don't remember who's responsible for saying it, but there's an old saying out there that when you take out all other issues, the most likely, the most realistic explanation is the obvious. And you cannot justify the actions of the Federal Reserve or the federal government any other way. You cannot sit here and say, well, it's just gotten bigger kind of by accident, and now they're just kind of running along with the running along with the horse trying to keep it under control. I don't buy that. You can't say that this is in the best interest of the country because the Federal Reserve's mandate, if you will, is to keep us from having these wild scenarios of inflation, deflation, and to keep us from having market swings. Well, with all due respect, we've had more recessions and depressions since the Federal Reserve came into being than we had without them. So, in fact, if that is their mandate for existence, why do we have them? If they have completely and utterly failed at their job, why do we have them? I mean, why is it that we would allow an agency or a group of banks to go out there and put our nation in debt, manipulate our monetary supply, manipulate our markets, manipulate inflation, if they weren't actually doing the job, if they weren't accomplishing the task that that's been set forth for them? And if they do operate in secret, the question next becomes, well, how do we prove or disprove their faith and honesty, their integrity, that they are doing things for the right motive? We can't. And so what you need to recognize is that any time a government operates in secret, and you cannot deny that the Federal Reserve, while it may not be officially a part of the federal government, you cannot deny that it is a creation of the federal government, and therefore, well, it's really kind of questionable as to whether the tail is wagging the dog or the dog is wagging the tail. But the real issue is it doesn't really make any difference. What we have is a group of bankers that, for all intents and purposes, have essentially got the United States of America at the point of a gun, making determined decisions that affect everything that we do, that affect every aspect, whether it's employment, whether it's inflation, whether it's the value of our money, whether it is the value of our money domestically or internationally. And when you look at historically the purpose behind entities like the Federal Reserve, one cannot justify their existence based on the benefit that they are supposed to deliver to the corporate or to the body corporate, the body politic, the sponsoring government. Central banks never have, and they never will. That's why our founders were so dead set against them. You know, Thomas Jefferson said to us that we should never have debt that we could not pay off within a 20-year window, because at that time, the principle was that was the effective working lifespan of the average person. And in reality, you cannot bear debt or create debt that you cannot pay off during the course of your lifetime. He wasn't alone. In fact, the Federal Reserve System was denounced repeatedly and was actually knocked out of the box on 2 separate prior occasions. But money, as it always does, carried the day, and in 1913 we got the Federal Reserve with a short-term charter, which almost immediately was eliminated. Those people who say that, you know, it's 2013, the Fed's been in play for 100 years, let's remove the charter, have obviously not done their homework. The charter has been modified, and it was done so back in I believe in the late 30s, so that it has perpetual life. Did you hear the word I just used? Perpetuity. That means it can never be disbanded except by an act of Congress. Now, I invite you to take a look at that scenario and think to yourself, will Congress ever do that? For the record, we now have a $4.1 trillion balance sheet at the Federal Reserve. $4.1 trillion. That's a 391% increase from when Ben Bernanke took over as the chairman in 2006. 391%, ladies and gentlemen. In other words, it was at that time $834 billion. It's now $4.1 trillion. Now, if you consider the fact that the president has added $8 trillion to the budget just during his tenure, and it's only 5 years into it, we've got another 3 to go. You have to realize that when you talk about $8 trillion in debt, and the Fed is holding $4 trillion of that, where do you think that money is? Well, better way to phrase it might be to say, where do you think, or why do you think the Fed has to buy the debt? Well, let's just think about this for a moment. If you are trying to get rid of or sell money, you have to find someone who's willing to lend it to you, right? You want to borrow. And when there's no takers in the marketplace, you turn to a group like the Federal Reserve to monetize the national debt. Now, we were promised over and over and over repeatedly that we would not monetize our national debt because anyone who is an economist of any merit will acknowledge and admit that when you monetize your own debt, you've essentially sealed your fate. You cannot use the Visa card to pay off the MasterCard indefinitely. And yet that's essentially what we've done. And with the Fed buying that debt, it's because foreign nations don't want it, or corporate interests don't want it. And interestingly enough, during the State of the Union address, this man who calls himself president actually came out and made a suggestion that we create this new forced savings account called the MyRA, which would allow individuals to save up to $15,000. But the only thing that you could buy with it would be federal debt. Interesting, isn't it? Why do we need that? We have a smorgasbord of IRA-like retirement-type programs out there. Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, 401ks, Keogh plans. There's a veritable plethora of them out there. Why would we need to add another one? Because this one allows you to only buy one thing: federal debt. Federal debt that the Chinese don't really want any more of. Federal debt that the Japanese don't want any more of. Federal debt that our traditional debt holders have said, stop right there. We have enough. That's all we want. We can't take any more. China, where most people look as the largest holder of our debt, and in fact they are at $1.3 trillion, give or take, and it changes, fluctuates a little bit here and there, but $1.3 trillion is about the balance. Now, with a $1.3 trillion balance, they're the largest holder. But a close runner-up to them that most people don't even realize is Japan with $1.1 trillion. And when you look at these two nations that are literally holding $2.5 trillion of our debt, they both pale in comparison to the Federal Reserve with $4.1 trillion and no assets to cover it, ladies and gentlemen. They don't have a GDP. They don't have, and they never had the money to buy the debt in the first place. See, I mean, where did they get the $4.1 trillion to buy the debt in the first place? They didn't. What you don't realize is that the money does not exist. We're just taking it out of the left pocket and putting it into the right pocket. And then we're going to pay a commission on it, and we're going to pay interest on it while we're at it. So by allowing someone else to reach into our pocket and transfer our money from the left to the right, they skim some off the top, and then they charge us an interest rate to move it while we stand here with our hands in cuffs. It's treasonous for the Treasury, for Congress, for the judiciary, and the executive to allow this behavior to continue. Treasonous. The only constitutionally authorized method of dealing with a national monetary supply is through the Treasury Department. Congress has no authority and had no authority to subdelegate and put an entity like the Federal Reserve, which has no oversight from Congress, in power to make these decisions on our behalf, to produce and manufacture money from nothing, from thin air, to purchase our debt, and then charge us an interest on it. Most people don't realize what the debt is actually made up of. They think, it's all held by foreign nations. It's really not. The Federal Reserve is holding $4 trillion of it. Our two biggest creditors, China and Japan, are holding another, $2.5 trillion. So that's $6.5 trillion. Look at it that way. Well, we owe 18. So where's the other 12? Well, for the record, about $6 trillion of it is in corporate pension funds and things like that, and also state and federal pensions. So these pension funds, they put money into these treasury securities that they buy, and lots of corporations and banks buy treasury securities to kind of keep money afloating, if you will. And that's where the vast majority of the debt resides, with the corporate world and the pension world. So realize that if we were to collapse on our debt or fail to pay it or repudiate the debt, which is, when you use the word repudiation and debt in the same sentence, guns come out. Because to say that we're going to repudiate the debt means that we're refusing to pay it. We're disallowing it. We're saying it wasn't legitimate, and therefore we're not responsible to pay it. And so when people hear that, people like the Federal Reserve and Congress, they get very itchy trigger fingers. Now, the IMF has actually come out and made some statements to the effect that they consider it legitimate policy for us to actually not repudiate the debt, but to go out there and just scrape a percentage off the top of every account in the United States of America and across the entire globe, that banks should be able to say, okay, everyone who's got money in the bank, we're going to take a unified 10% and scrape it right off the top and then use that to pay off our banking debt or our national debt, depending on, and the reason there's a differentiation there is because in many countries the banks are nationalized and they're partly owned by the government. So the governments are kind of borrowing from the banks and so forth and so on. But the point is simply this. When the International Monetary Fund is openly backing, in fact, recommending a plan that calls for the confiscation of savers' money, you got to realize, ladies and gentlemen, the jig is up. I mean, there's nothing left for us to discuss at this point. Everybody knows, everybody of any intellectual honesty, everybody of any level of objectivity recognizes the debt has ballooned to the point where we can no longer, and China is not in better shape, so don't make the mistake of thinking they are. In fact, their $23 trillion bubble is about to burst because they've been building their nation on manufactured debt as well. Just because they hold, 1.3 trillion of our debt, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what they owe. And any slip doesn't mean... Look, here's the analogy I want you to consider. This is, when a country has some limited amount of debt, well within the country's, or well within the country's ability to pay it off, it's kind of like hanging on a rope between two buildings, but only being inches off the ground. And I mean, worst case scenario is you let go of the rope and you fall to the ground, but you only fall a few inches. When we're talking about the kind of debt that we have, and the kind of debt that China has, and the kind of debt that Russia has, and the kind of debt that Japan has, we are hanging over the Snake River Canyon 2,700 feet above the first landing place. I mean, one slip. There's nowhere to go, folks. There's nowhere to fall. You cannot fall and get away with it. There is no safe landing. All right. Before we wrap this segment, I do want to thank our friends over at the battery station. They have been, and Kevin over there has been a great supporter of America's Voice for many years. And I'd like you to make sure that you patronize his facility and his business. You can get to his website by going to batterystation.com if you are not local. And if you are local, please make sure that you do everything in your power to get in there and see him the next time you're in the area. Outstanding store, carries everything, for flashlights and batteries, but also carries a ton of different types of ammunition. He carries all kinds of survival gear and food products, and I mean, the list is endless. And I'll tell you what, he is probably one of the most patriotic people I know. I'm going to talk to you after the break about the co-op program we've put together, which he promotes and sponsors for our listeners. But listen, do yourself a favor and get in to see the folks over at Battery Station. They're at 303 Washington Avenue on right just off the square in West Plains. You can also call them at 417-257-7799. Make sure that you see our friends over at Pizza Hut. And when you get into Pizza Hut, go over there and tell Bruce, the manager, hey, you know what? I just want to I want to shake your hand and I want to thank you for supporting and endorsing America's Voice Now. I listen to Mike all the time, and I just wanted to thank you for supporting him. Pizza Hut has an excellent program. Every day they have a lunch menu where they have soup and... I'm sorry. I don't know why I always say soup and salad bar. It's a salad bar with a pizza bar and a pasta bar. There is no soup. I don't know why I keep saying that. Anyway, make sure that you get in there to see them. Every day they have the lunch special. But in addition to that, on Tuesday nights, they have family night where kids under 12 eat free. And so make sure that you get over there to see them. Make sure that you see Jason Henry at the law offices of Jason Henry. He's also on Court Square in West Plains. He handles both state and federal criminal cases as well as civil cases relating to auto accidents and the like. Family law as well. You can reach him at 417-256-4100. My friends over at the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop, please make sure that you call them as well. They are at 417-257-1776, where they've got everything for cigars and tobacco and every accessory and accoutrement known to man. And our friends at Wits End Classic Barber Shop, where I get my hair cut. Get in there and get yourself a $10 haircut. You will not be disappointed. Make sure that you see our newest sponsors over at Express Mini Mart 1 and 2. We'll be back in just a moment.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice right here, right now. My name is Michael Evans. I am the host here this morning. I'm the host here every morning. If you're just joining us, we're in our third of 4 segments this morning, and we've got some things that we're going to wrap on this morning, including the DNC and how they want illegals to vote. Donna Brazile, who is the member of the DNC, who's come out and made a statement that they want to reform immigration so that illegals can vote. And she said this during a discussion with this week with George Stephanopoulos, who is an interviewer, and she's stressing that the Obama administration and the president himself cannot stop short of full citizenship on immigration reform, because citizenship will be the only way that will allow current illegals to vote. Wow. I'm going to tackle a couple of the precepts on that. And I want to also talk a little bit about why the Republicans are just as guilty, because anyone who thinks that this is limited to a democratic concept is fooling themselves and is allowing their ideology to blind them. So do yourself a favor and do not be caught up in that little game that the Republicans would have you play. The game that says, it is this is the Democrats promoting this. The Republicans now have the ball in their court, and it is up to them to steal defeat from the jaws of victory. They could let this thing die and go fallow, but they're determined, and John Boehner especially and the rest of the leadership over there are determined to make this happen. Even when 3% of America says immigration is important, only 3%. And so when we talk about, 3% of America who says immigration's important, you got to question, why is it that Congress is pushing so hard for this? Well, we're going to look at it in just a moment. Make sure that you see our friends over at Mini Mart Express 1 and Mini Mart Express 2. This is a brand new sponsor for AVN, and they have 2 of these shops that are in the town of West Plains. And if you're here in the area, make sure that you swing in there and see those guys. They have some outstanding programs that you probably want to take advantage of. They are in Express Mini Mart 2, which is up on the corner of Route 14 and Route 63. They've taken over Granny's Cafe, the old building that was up there. And they've completely renovated it and built this beautiful facility that you want to make sure that you swing in and see. They have the cheapest fountain drinks that you can get from 39 cents and up. And they've got, like every brand name of soda in there that you could imagine. And they've got cups that are, 16 ounces on up to, they've got this gigantic cup. I think this thing is about a half a gallon. And it's only like $1 or something to fill it up. So make sure that you get in there. They also have a drive-through in both locations. And so if you don't want to jump out of your car because it's cold or it's wet or, you don't have enough time to stop and mess around, all you got to do is pull up to the drive-through and tell them what you want. They'll run over and grab it for you, and boom, you're out of there, and you never have to leave your car. They also handle these vapor e-cigarettes and the liquid associated with them. In fact, they've got this Tsunami vaporizer liquid if you're interested or you're trying to knock smoking out. You buy 5 and you get 1 free. And they also have the lowest prices on tobacco products that you're going to find in the area. They have coolers and liquor and wine coolers and things like that as well. They have this monster ice-cold beer cave. I mean, this thing is so cold it's like 30 degrees in there. It's amazing that this stuff doesn't freeze. they have snacks and chips and hot food and lottery tickets and all the rest of that thing as well. So when you get in there, just go over to George or whoever's in either facility and just say, I heard about you on America's Voice Now, and I just wanted to thank you guys for sponsoring them because they're doing a good job for America. Make sure that you see them. They're on the corner of 14 and 63 near Granny's Cafe, or in the old Granny's Cafe building. And they serve alcohol in that particular facility. And then the other location that they have is right across the street from the pool in West Plains, the city pool, and that's at People's Park. Now, that facility doesn't sell alcohol or liquor, but make sure that you swing in there and take advantage of that facility. They also have hot food specials and stuff like that. So, good people, nice. I swing in there all the time, and in fact, you all know I'm a smoker. I buy all my cigarettes there. So they're friends of mine, and they have been more than gracious about supporting AVN, and I'm thankful for them. Make sure that you thank them too. See our friends over at the battery station. Kevin has put this program together called the Food Co-op, and it's only for our listeners. And if you're not familiar with this, before I get back into this topic that we're tackling this morning of the DNC and illegal immigration, let me tell you why this co-op is so important to you. You are able to go there and buy bulk wholesale food at wholesale pricing. In other words, you're buying it for the same price as everybody, who is a retailer is buying it for. And he doesn't mark it up 1 penny. In other words, you can go in there and you can buy bulk food in a 50-pound bag or a 25-pound bag, and you can buy salt and sugar and rice, brown rice, organic rice, wheat, flour. You can buy the flour berries and crush it and grind them up yourself if you want. There is literally, hundreds and hundreds of products that you can buy. And it's all bulk, and it's all dry store goods. So you can, put it away and store it off for leaner times. Or you can just buy it in bulk and then not have to go to the store and pay retail. Now, I've got listeners that have unequivocally told me that they have saved up to 50% on their food bill by using this program. And it is not open to everybody. It's only open to America's Voice Now listeners and the people that, shop routinely over at the battery station. And so what I'm offering you is an opportunity to take advantage of a program that doesn't cost you a penny and gives you literally a 50% reduction on your food bill. There's no membership to join. There's no strings attached. This is Kevin's patriotic moment to do the right thing for the country and for our listenership. And I'm really grateful to him for it. I buy there. So the orders go in once a month. And so what you got to do is go to the battery station. And when you walk in, just say, I'm coming here because I heard Mike telling me about this co-op program on AVN, and I'd like to have the catalog. They'll give you the catalog, and you go through it and point out what you want. They give you a form that you can fill out and put your order in, and whether it's, a bag of oatmeal or a bag of sugar or a bag of salt or a bag of whatever, all kinds of baking goods and stuff like that. You buy it, you put down on the list what you want. If it's a large order, they may ask you for a small deposit or something. But basically what happens is within about 30 days, the order is delivered. You get a phone call. They ask you to come in and get it that day because he doesn't have a lot of storage room there. And you're finished. There's no charge. There's no fees. There's no we get to screw you one more time fee. There's none of that. There's just a good man and his family who are doing the right thing for my listenership, you, and the rest of our country. And I got to give him credit for that. So thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you. Make sure that you see our other sponsors as well, folks, please. These guys back us all the time. They have stepped up to the plate to keep this show on the air, and I can't thank them enough. Our friends over at the law offices of Jason Henry. You can find him at number 10 Court Square in West Plains. His phone number is 417-256-4100. If you are interested in, if you've got a criminal case, either state or federal, if you've got family matters, a divorce or a custody issue that you're going through, or some kind of a situation like that. If you have a case where you've been involved in an automobile accident and you need some legal help, his consultation with you is free initially, and you won't find a guy who will work harder for you. That I can tell you. I'm not a big fan of lawyers usually, but I know Jason on a personal level. He's done some work for me, and he's done a very, very good job. Again, he's at number 10 Court Square in West Plains. He's right across the street from the courthouse. And you can reach him at 417-256-4100. Our friends at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop, where they had the football game on there last night. And they are at number 2 Court Square, and you can go there by slipping into Wits End Classic Barber Shop, get yourself a haircut, then go into the back and visit the Cigar and Tobacco Shop in the rear. And they have a beautiful facility there. I mean, they've got big screen TVs up there and one of these smoke eaters that draws the smoke out of the room. You can actually have a cigar or a pipe right there. You can buy all of those goods and every accessory that you can imagine, everything from humidors to the liquid that you put in the humidors. They've got lighters and it's all there. So make sure that and you know what's cool about it? It's kind of like an old style atmosphere, like where a lot of local folks swing in there and they'll sit and chat about this or that, or talk about business, talk about politics, talk about women, whatever they do. You know how guys are, right? There are women I've met there, actually, who go in there and have a cigar or a pipe, too. So, women, you're certainly not excluded, and you're more than welcome. You can find those guys at number 2 Court Square in West Plains, and you can call them at 417-257-1776. They do ship across the country if you need some products that they have. You can also make sure that you visit Wits End Classic Barbershop and get your hair cut. I'm probably going over there tomorrow morning and get my hair cut as well. So, okay, when we talk about the real issue here of this DNC recommendation that the president shouldn't quit until illegals have the right to vote, you got to wonder what it is that the Republicans are doing backing and siding this argument. Now, I saw an article the other day out there that Ryan, who ran for vice president, as you recall, he's considered to be the darling of the financial world with respect to the House, and he's, they say he's such an even-handed leader and all the rest of that. But he's been promoting this. And I got to tell you, folks, there isn't any justification or rationale to take illegals in this country and give them full citizenship. First and foremost, without sealing the border. And secondly, honoring and respecting what they've done, which is violating our laws. You see, this is the epitome of lawlessness that has completely taken our country by storm. There is nothing anymore that government does that even remotely resembles lawful. I mean, I posted up an article this morning about a woman who's been jailed without bond. Now, let's understand something. This lady has, and she's been feeding the birds and squirrels and things like that, and she's been feeding these bears, or a bear. And, she says, the neighbors say that she's been feeding these backyard animals as long as they can remember. And she's 81 years old. She's a phys ed teacher who's retired. And they put her in jail the other day without bond. Without bond. Now, let's understand something. I don't care what she did. There's almost no excuse for without bond unless you are such a heinous murderer or so likely to flee that kind of arrangement needs to be made. But she's 81 years old. She's a homeowner. And she's not endangered anyone else. Now, they say she's endangered people because by feeding these bears, she's made them less afraid of human beings and more dependent on handouts. And I got to question the concept of that because the Conservation Department says feeding the animals makes them dependent. So Why doesn't the rest of the government get that when it comes to things like food stamps and welfare and health care and Medicare and Medicaid and immigration, Social Security, cell phones, farm bills, pork, and the bribery of the electorate with goodies and largesse of the Treasury? Makes you think, doesn't it? Isn't it interesting that the Conservation Department has a sign out that says, don't feed the animals, it makes them dependent. And the rest of the federal government is like, make them as dependent as we can, feed them everything we can give them. But when we talk about jailing a woman because she's been warned before, you know what? You've got people who have been accused of murder and rape and robbery and burglary and armed assault who aren't held without bail. And you're going to take an 81-year-old woman because she fed a bear and defied a judge? The heck is the matter with you? And here you are sitting here saying, on one hand, it's okay to do this, to take an 81-year-old woman and put her in the county jail and hold her without bond because she fed some bears. But on the other hand, we're going to take a group of illegals who have already clearly violated and broken our laws. They jumped the fence, came into our land, stole our resources, stole them. And now you're going to say, we're going to reward that behavior by giving you the right to vote. You know, there was an excellent article out the other day, and I don't have it right in front of me here, but Ann Coulter wrote it. And she was pointing out that there are a number of studies that have been done that show that the perspective of people who come here from foreign lands, and it's not just, in the south of the border, it's all over the place, are not in line with what the vast majority of America feels, the mainstream of America feels. In other words, they want big government. They want socialistic government that gives them stuff for free. And, coming here, they're expecting that. And the truth of the matter is that by allowing that to happen, and Congress knows exactly what they're doing, both sides of the House, the Democrats and the Republicans, by allowing them to have open access to our electorate system or electoral system, that we are essentially ensuring our own marginalization. Why would anyone do that? I mean, what would be the purpose behind that? It can't possibly serve us, and America knows it. Only 3% of America thinks immigration's important. 3%. The rest of us say, listen, we got bigger fish to fry. First and foremost, seal the border, lock it down so tight a flea can't get through without permission and a rubber stamp. And after you've accomplished that, then we can sit down and have any discussion you want. I've been advocating this for years now. No immigration without a border sealing that is not only unequivocal, but is verified independently, not by the sycophants over at the Department of Homeland Security, who are going to say whatever the president wants them to say about whether or not the border is actually sealed. They lie to us routinely. We need an independent ombudsman, a representative of the people, to go and verify that the borders are actually sealed by talking to the Border Patrol and saying, are there people coming across here that you're told not to arrest? Because that's what's happening, people. Your government is betraying you. And now they want to give them the right to vote. And they're not even trying to hide it. This Donna Brazile has come right out and said that the president cannot stop short of full citizenship on immigration reform because that is what will allow current illegals to vote. Her argument is that I don't think you can create two classes of citizens in this society. one with legal status and the right to vote and one without. Stop right there, Ms. Brazile. First of all, we already have a legal status in this country like that. It's called felons, okay? And I'm the first one to break it to you, perhaps, but there are a lot of citizens in this country who have either been in jail or are currently in jail, who you've stripped of the right to vote, you've stripped of their Second Amendment right, you've stripped of their First Amendment right, you've stripped of their Fourth Amendment right and their Fifth Amendment right and their Sixth Amendment right and their Eighth Amendment right. And you didn't have a problem with any of that. But you're going to take people who are guilty of even more heinous crimes than many of them are, and you're going to give them some kind of special privilege and allow them to vote, but you won't allow a felon to go in and sit on jury duty. You've got to be kidding me. Explain the irony of that, Ms. Brazile. You have already created two classes of citizens in this country, and by the way, you lump all of us, illegal and legal, the peasantry, if you will, into one caste. And it's not a class, it's a caste. C-A-S-T-E. If you don't understand that, go ask anybody from India, Asian India. They'll tell you all about the caste system. That when you're born into it, doesn't matter how hard you strive, you live there and you die there. And Ms. Brazile, you've already created a caste system. It's called the 1 or 2 million people at the very top and everybody else. And you are part of that 1 or 2 million. So frankly, your opinion has no credibility and no validity. The simple truth is, you're interested in what you can politically, personally gain from this. Because you represent the DNC and the Democratic National Committee. And your achievement here is to retain and grow your power by manipulation, falsehood, lies, misrepresentation, and quite frankly, the selling out of America for your own personal gain and aggrandizement. Y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. I'll tell you what, I'm so sick of tyrants, and I'm so sick of betrayers. When I look at every one of these people, when I see them in an interview on television, they make me sick to my stomach. I look at a guy like Boehner, and I want to puke. I look at Donna Brazile, and I want to vomit. These people make me sick because they willingly, knowingly, intentionally have sold you out and couldn't care less. That's not hypocrisy. That's criminal. I hate a liar, and I hate a hypocrite, and I hate a thief. And I got to tell you, everybody in the political arena today is all three. All right, you've been listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Eric Holder and how he and the Department of Justice are guilty of high crimes against the United States of America. Make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen. Eric Holder is a traitor, and he is acting treasonously against the United States of America. I don't make any bones about it. We're going to talk about why this kind of a statement puts you under the Main Core database and explain to you what Main Core is. We'll be right back. All right. That's about as good as I can do the, all right, we're on radio today voice. I don't do that very well. There's some guys that can naturally slip into that. I can't. I don't know how they do it. I'm pretty good at emulating some accents and things. I can do Indian accent pretty well. I'm very happy to meet you. Thank you very much for calling us at Microsoft. What can we do to help you today? Or, the guys back home where I come from and stuff like that, hey, I can slip into that fairly easily. But that radio thing, I don't do that very well. When we look at guys like Eric Holder, who's been censured and found guilty of criminal and civil. Now, I want you to understand the implications of this. This is the equivalent of a no-confidence vote that is normally held in most parliamentary-type governments. When you look at England, and you look at India, and you look at Israel and countries like that have these kind of parliamentary-style governments, they don't have true republics. They have representative governments, but kind of limited. A no-confidence vote basically says that the ruling party, has no confidence of the electorate and the other members of government. And so in order to retain their majority leadership or role, they have to bring in and compromise by co-joining or conjoining themselves with other groups that have a more moderated view, whatever that may be. Whether it's conservative or liberal, makes no difference. And when you look at Eric Holder, he is a guy who has openly lied to Congress, provably lied to Congress. He has been given special dispensation from the truth and from investigation by the president who's appointed him, which is a conflict of interest as large as an elephant in a tiny tar paper shack. He's a guy who is responsible for Fast and Furious and the death of at least one, or not, if not two, agents of the United States of America. So American citizens and law enforcement at that. And literally the deaths of hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of innocent collateral damage citizens of Mexico. He is a racist. He's a traitor in the most traditional sense. And now he comes out and says that in a Senate Judicial Committee hearing, he had no idea that the guy that was appointed to investigate the IRS being used as a weapon of mass destruction against conservative organizations was a fundraiser and a contributor to the Obama administration. Well, with all due respect, that brings a couple of issues to mind. One, as the leader and the chief law enforcement officer in the nation, you cannot lie under oath and have any level of credibility left, or ethics, or morals, or integrity, or honor. And he has none of those. Eric Holder is a true traitor to the United States. He is systematically loading up the Department of Justice with ideologically bent individuals who are not interested in the rule of law, are not interested in justice, but are interested in meting out their version of social justice. What's more, they seek to undermine the Constitution and the rule of law from within. In other words, these are the traitors at the gate. These are the guys who, in the days of yore, would sneak to the gate late at night when the moon is down and there's no light and unlock the door to allow the enemy to come in and ravage their own city. I don't know of another word that you can use than traitor. This is a guy who's been held in contempt civilly and criminally. Why Congress does not declare him unfit to serve is beyond me. Why they have not passed a no confidence resolution on him to forcibly remove him from office is beyond my comprehension. In fact, why they haven't said, you know something, we're not going to vote on another bill until Eric Holder is resigned or fired. Your choice, but get him out. Yes, it is time that our representatives began to apply and utilize the same level of pressure, and you can call it a hijack if you want. I don't really care, because at this point, we would be utilizing the same tactics against our abundantly clear enemy that they've been using against us for decades now, generations. How do I mean that? Well, when you look at the issue of a guy like Eric Holder, there's no denying the fact that he's using every available ounce of power to work in diametric opposition to what the nation is best served, or to the manner in which the nation is best served. In other words, everything he does has a political motivation which is diametrically opposed to the best interests of the United States of America. I don't know anything about the political activities of any of the people who are involved in this investigation. Quote, unquote. Let's hear that again. Eric Holder, quote, "No, I don't know anything about the political activities of any of the people who are involved in this investigation." End quote. Now, let's just understand what that means for a moment, because he has an obligation to know. At his level, in what is arguably supposed to be the one department of government which has objectivity, the Justice Department, right? Justice is blind, so they say. Doesn't take sides, is impartial, is unbiased. And one would imagine, with the sensitivity of the scandal of the IRS being used as a weapon against conservative political organizations, that he would go out of his way to do the right thing and say, it's my job to make sure that there's not even an impression of impropriety, that no one even draws a quick intake of breath, that the person who I appoint to this job is so above reproach, is so above concern, that no one can say this person has an agenda. Because that is what the country needs. The country needs the assurance that our government is not building an enemies list. And if you're not familiar with Maine Corps, I strongly encourage you to get yourself educated. Maine Corps is a system which I've been talking about for years, and I've heard it called various things over the years, but essentially it's an enemies list. It's a list of, at last count, and that was around 2009 or 10, about 8 million Americans who are on a list. No one knows how they got there or who appointed them or who added them to the list. There's no way to know if you're on it. There's no way to get yourself off of it. And these are the individuals who, under a declaration of emergency or under a declaration of martial law or under a national emergency declaration by the president, the government has unilaterally given itself the right to go pick those people up and under a National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, indefinitely detain them based on God only knows what. We don't even know. But you see, you can't do that to a corporation whom, in the Supreme Court's infinite wisdom, they've given the rights of individuals. Personhood status, if you will, which is ridiculous in and of itself. A corporation is not a person, and it doesn't have the rights of a person. And it should never have been given those rights. This is another example of 9 black-robed idiots who have capitulated to the corporate mastership, the corporatocracy of the United States of America, to declare and give right to life to something that's inanimate. You wouldn't declare your refrigerator to have the rights of a human being, and that it could sue because you open the doors too frequently and let out the cold. That's essentially what's happened with corporations. It's not vastly different. And yet they can't be held accountable. No one can go to jail in a corporation. How do you imprison a corporation? You don't. You fine them. Well, I mean, isn't that a convenient excuse to pretty much do whatever you want and know that you can simply pay your way through with a get-out-of-jail-free card? This guy has an obligation to make sure that the person that is in charge of an investigation, which is looking at impropriety in and of itself and favoritism, should be above reproach of favoritism himself. Wouldn't that be a prerequisite of the job? I mean, really? How absurd. Here we are looking at an accusation, which is fairly well substantiated at this point, that a federal agency has been using its power inappropriately and abusing its authority and discretion and police power, frankly. And we're going to, rather than take someone who is above reproach and above the concern of objectivity, we're going to appoint someone who is not only a sycophant of the Obama administration, but has actually been a donor to their campaigns. Wow. And then you're going to sit there and say to me, you didn't question that. You didn't think about that. You didn't ask about that. You didn't qualify him and vet him. You didn't ask this individual, where do you stand politically? Because, listen, this is an investigation that has to be above reproach because it's about favoritism. So if you've shown favoritism, we've got a problem right off the bat. No, Mr. Holder says, no, I don't know anything about the political activities of any of the people who were involved in the investigation. Okay, so let's take him at his word. If we do, what that tells you is that, number one, he's incompetent. He's incompetent because he has an obligation to know. He's incompetent because he has a duty to know. It's called malfeasance when incompetence is done under the color of title. In other words, it's okay for you to be incompetent about your own affairs. There's no crime in that. There's no crime in being stupid. But when you are given a public trust and you are incompetent, it is called malfeasant. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is in the criminal realm. Ted Cruz came back and said to him, I got to tell you, I find it astonishing that the Department of Justice appointed a major Obama donor to head this investigation. So the first question I want to ask is, did you know that the lawyer in charge of this investigation was a major Obama donor? Whereupon Eric Holder responds and says, nope, I don't know anything about the political activities of any of the people who are involved in this investigation. And by that statement, ladies and gentlemen, he convicted himself. The truth of the matter is, Bosserman, the woman who's been appointed for this position, is a donor and a supporter of the Obama regime. And she is got a history of operating and being a Democratic operative under the guise of her legitimate business duties as a government employee. She sat on the IRS's Civil Rights Commission as a trial attorney. So the game is, first and foremost, that as a trial attorney, she should know, and quite honestly, she should have recused herself, as she would demand of any judge, because of a conflict of interest. In other words, let's just take this scenario for a moment and look at this. If she were sitting in a courtroom and she was either a prosecutor or a defense counsel, and a judge was known to have the same level of conflict of interest that she has, she would be the first one to jump up and down and say, Your Honor, you must recuse yourself. You have a conflict of interest. You cannot be impartial. You cannot be objective. You cannot look at this case in an unbiased fashion. Because you have a prior relationship, you have a prior business arrangement, you have a prior donation, a prior predisposition. You cannot be objective, Your Honor. And she would have been right. But now in the opposite case, she's in the position of being investigator, and she refuses to do that which she would demand of anyone else. Holder is an attorney. He would be sitting in front of any judge that had the same level of conflict of interest and demanding a recusal. He objects to the characterization, and that's his phrase, that Ms. Bozerman, as the lead lawyer on the case, says the investigation, quote, is being done by the Civil Rights Division as well as the Criminal Division of the Justice Department. And if I had to assign a lead in this, I would say that the Criminal Division of Public Integrity section has actually got the lead. Well, the truth of the matter is, public integrity, sir, would require objectivity, wouldn't it? The name Justice Department should tell you everything that you need to know. You cannot be partial if you're truly seeking justice. Truth is, Cruz, and Cruz is a lawyer too. So you got one lawyer asking another lawyer about why another lawyer is not doing her job properly by recusing herself. And whether or not he had guilty knowledge that she had a conflict of interest and partiality before he appointed her. He says, General Holder, with all due respect, you did not answer the question I asked. The question I asked is, did you know that this lawyer was a major Obama donor? It's a yes or no answer. Holder denied knowing the political activities of anyone involved in the investigation. Cruz noted that the DOJ's ethic guidelines, that's ethics guidelines in the Department of Justice. That's a little like baby grand piano, jumbo shrimp, and other oxymorons, right? Holder denied knowing the political activities of anybody in the investigation, and he notes that the DOJ ethics guidelines instruct lawyers who believe their impartiality might be questioned must either, quote, disqualify themselves or see an ethics officer. Well, with all due respect, no one who is truly impartial would look at Ms. Bozerman and say, you don't have an objectivity problem here. And so one of two things should have happened. She does have a problem where her impartiality not only might be questioned, is definitely being questioned. And by the people who have the most to lose. Secondly, she has refused to disqualify herself. He's refused to disqualify her. And we don't know whether she's seen an ethics officer, but it doesn't make any difference because any ethics officer who would look at this on prima facie, on its face, would say, there ain't no way, lady, you can do this job. The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, that Ms. Bosserman is only one of literally thousands and thousands of attorneys that the Department of Justice has put onto their staff in the last, well, especially since Eric Holder's tenure, but even before that. And their goal is not to seek justice. Their goal is to twist and misuse the law that they have sworn an oath to uphold to achieve their political aims and agendas. And I'm telling you right now that that is grounds for a charge of treason. Why? Because when you are a person in the position of, one, being responsible for justice, then you are held to a higher standard. And any action that's contrary to that is a high crime. Not because it's an important crime, but because you're in a high position of authority, which you have violated and misused or abused for whatever your agenda is or purposes. And it makes no difference what they are. None of it can be rationalized. None of it is excusable. Either way you look at this, his position is untenable. It's untenable because either he's a liar, which I believe, and that would place him in a position of no longer being qualified to be the chief law enforcement officer in the nation, or he's malfeasant because he didn't follow his duty to make sure that the person that he was dealing with and that he was appointing to this was above reproach. And then, to make matters worse, he actually says, I'm not obligated to do that. So, not only has he failed malfeasantly, which is a crime when you are in a high crime position, it's not just malfeasance. It's not malpractice. It's criminal malfeasance. And when you willfully become malfeasant, you are way over the threshold. The truth of the matter is, and our founders told us this in no uncertain terms, when we get to a point in our nation where we, the electorate, recognize that government is not following the laws, then we are not obligated to follow them either. And ladies and gentlemen, I tell you where we are right now. There is almost no reason left for Americans to live within the law that this government has laid down. That can mean a lot of things. Don't interpret what I'm saying. Those of you listening in the DOJ and the NSA and the FBI, don't try to read something into this that isn't. What it says is that when you misuse the police power, as you so clearly and blatantly and obviously have, that we're under no obligation to follow your direction, your orders, or any law that you've put in place. We have to default back to common law. And that gives us an awful lot that you don't credit us with. Have a nice day. We'll see you all tomorrow.